Another day goes past and you still can't help yourself. Once again, you're lost in the endless scroll of social media. Your thumb is moving up and down as if you have no control or no choice but to consume. You're glued to your phone. And what about spending an entire day binge watching a series on Netflix? The hours simply slipping by, episode after episode. What about spending multiple hours in YouTube rabbit holes? You tell yourself that this is going to be the last video, but a new video pops up, you're like, okay, cool, maybe just one more. Or maybe you end up going on an adult movie binge, saying, okay, just one more video, maybe just one more fab, and then that'll be enough. You're feeling fully hopeless and lost. You want to stop, but you simply just can't help yourself. In all these situations, what kept us motivated to keep going is the effect of dopamine in our brains. Dopamine is often called a molecule of wanton desire. It's a neurotransmitter in the brain which allows individuals' neurons to communicate with each other. Most importantly, dopamine is part of the reward system. It's the thing that motivates us to do stuff. Today, I want to summarize my top 5 learnings from this book right here, Dopamine Nation. Okay, first let's just talk about how dopamine actually works. Evolution has designed our brain to reward us for anything that would increase our chance of reproduction and survival, things like food and sex. Dopamine is at the core to give us a sense of drive and motivation. In a study where genetically engineered mice were unable to produce dopamine, would simply not seek out any food and will simply starve to death even if the food is placed a couple of inches in front of them. In today's modern hyper-connected digital society, we're constantly bombarded with high dopamine stimuli, which leads us to compulsive overconsumption, whether it's social media algorithms or cheap food, video games, just a plethora of free online adult movies. These are all cleverly designed to stimulate a sense of craving, a sense of more within our brains. What does all of this actually do to our drive and motivation? All of us had an experience of needing to get something important done, whether it's a revision for the test in a couple of days, or maybe this really important project at work, or maybe making this YouTube video. But we kept falling into the trap of procrastination with saying okay, cool, let me just escape and let me just scroll on YouTube, or let me just watch another TV show or whatever else. So here are my 5 biggest takeaways of this book. Okay, number 1, the pleasure-pain balance. Let's run an experiment. Decide to exclusively eat junk food for whatever reason. Maybe it's just cheaper, more convenient, faster, like you name it. Burgers, pizza, ice cream, fries, you name it. After a month of this new diet, and we can pretend that somehow you're still functional, one of your friends decides to invite you for dinner. Okay, so he prepared you this really delicious meal of, let's say, rice, steamed broccoli, and a bunch of vegetables. Despite the food being incredibly nutritious, well prepared, but to you it seems very bland and tasteless. But now imagine you were stranded on an island for 2 weeks, and then you were rescued and given this exact same meal. This time, however, this broccoli and the rice just taste exquisite to you, like it's the best meal you ever had in your life. You just savor every bite. What does all of this actually mean? Pleasure is relative and often depends on the contrast of what you're used to. This is what neuroscientists call the dopamine baseline. Okay, so here are 5 concepts which are critical to understanding how your dopamine baseline actually works. Number 1 is homeostasis. So pleasure and pain work like a balance because they're located in overlapping areas of the brain. And push down the pleasure side of the balance, let's say by binging like this new TV show, our brain will try to correct itself by pushing down on the pain side of the balance to maintain equilibrium and homeostasis. Basically, pleasure has a short-term cost. This is our body's way of maintaining stability. So let's say when you get too cold, you'll start to shiver, or when you get too warm, you start to sweat. All of this is to maintain constant internal body temperature. The same thing happens when our dopamine levels peak due to high stimulating activities, things like food, sex, drugs, you name it. Number 2 is tolerance. Okay, with repeat exposure to high dopamine activities, our threshold for pleasure actually goes up. This means that you need a higher and higher dose to maintain the same level of satisfaction. And the term for this is habituation. So as an example, people who just like to drink alcohol quite regularly, they need a higher and higher level. We need more and more of it to actually get drunk. Basically the same is applied for anything which generates a high dopamine response. So here's what Robert Sapolsky had to say in his book Behave about dopamine and habituation. A frequent human tragedy is that the more we consume, the hungrier we get. More and faster and stronger. What was unexpected pleasure yesterday is what we feel entitled to today, and what won't be enough tomorrow. 3, addiction. Okay, we often feel very empty and restless after indulging in these cravings because of this pain-pleasure balance. The good news is if we simply wait, our balance will return to normal. People who escape the pain and tend to push down on the high dopamine response can possibly develop addictions. This leads to states of anhedonia and inability to experience pleasure, where only things which are incredibly high in dopamine can actually bring any sort of pleasure to you. And number 4, variable rewards. It turns out that action leading to unpredictable rewards is a lot more addicting than actions which provide you with constant and predictable rewards. The famous scientist Pavlov, like we all know about Pavlov's dogs, but he did another experiment about mice, found out that mice will push down on a lever a lot more enthusiastically when they didn't know when their next reward is actually coming from, and when the reward is actually random, rather than when they received a stable and predictable reward. This is one of the reasons why gambling is just so addictive. The variable reward provides us with a feeling of excitement and anticipation. You simply don't know when you actually get a win, which makes it a bit more exciting. This is what contributes to addictive nature of social media, because with every time you open, every time you scroll, you don't know what the post is going to be. Maybe something funny or something your friend did, or it could be just complete nonsense. The memory of those unpredictable rewards keeps us hooked on the app, just keeps us scrolling for more and more. 5th point, novelty is a major drive for dopamine. This is why we tend to visit sites which have something new and shiny on the front page. This is also one of the main reasons why people have such a big problem with watching adult movies, because of this constant novelty and variety. Just like if you were to eat ice cream every day, this would make a healthy apple seem tasteless. 2nd point, dopamine fast. In majority of the cases, it's possible to reset our pleasure-pain balance by simple dopamine detox. Here's the step-by-step method. Firstly, just simply abstain for 30 days. So whatever you consume compulsively, just commit to abstraining from it for 30 days. Things are going to get worse before we get better. The first 2 weeks are normally quite brutal because that's when you experience all the withdrawals. However, after those 2 weeks have passed, and the pleasure pain balance is more or less reset, next 2 weeks just become a lot simpler and a lot less of an effort. The 2nd point is endure boredom. It's very normal to experience a sense of boredom and maybe even anxiety and stress when our highly dopamine driven activity is taken away from us. We have a strong urge to divert our attention from one high dopamine activity to another. For me, this happened with adult movies. When I stopped watching them, when I started doing NoFap and stopped watching them, I noticed myself going towards watching and binging just YouTube videos instead of trying to escape this feeling by indulging in a new high dopamine activity. How about we go inwards instead into our world, focus on the feeling we have inside, focus on sensations, rather than escaping those painful feelings with a different habit. She says we can find relief by escaping into the world. That means feeling what we feel inside, connecting with others around us, and finding what needs to be done in our environment. You can even use this as a meditation. Focus on the sensations which arise. Let them be there. Sit with them. And don't judge them. And just let them be there and let them pass. Okay, Dr. Lembke obviously didn't say this, but that's what I interpret from it. This is from Buddhist teachings. I heard this in a Vipassana meditation retreat. And the 3rd part is return to balance. After the 30 days, this could give you a new sense of clarity of how this consumption has affected your life. This will be the best time to decide what healthy balance actually means to you. Most people return to this high dopamine activity, but with a more mindful sense. Maybe instead of spending 4 hours on my phone per day, maybe I just spend half an hour. However, complete abstinence might work best for certain people. 3rd point is lean into pain. We'll experience how overindulging in pleasure has a subsequent pain associated with it. Let's say you have a massive takeaway like 2 pizzas or whatever, and how just lethargic and just shit you feel afterwards. It turns out that the opposite is actually true. So if you're on the pain side of the balance, your body will try to maintain equilibrium by pushing down the pleasure side as well. So Dr. Lembke calls this the pain paradox. Okay, so here's ways which you can use pain to make our lives more joyful, happy, and just balanced. So taking cold showers has a crazy good impact on our mind and body. Like right now, I'm just such a big craze about taking cold showers and ice baths and how good it is for you. There's multiple studies which have shown that cold showers improve circulation, reduce inflammation, and improve mood. This book highlights one study by Prague University that found that 1 hour of cold immersion lead up to 250% increase in plasma dopamine levels, meaning it's very good for you. If you want to know a bit more about cold exposure in general, I made a video about my experience with 2 years of taking exclusively cold showers. Number 2 is exercise. Okay, it might feel uncomfortable, especially at the start, but exercise provides with positive stress to our bodies. Exercise improves mood and energy, just overall health and just well-being of ourselves. Dr. Lembke talks about how exercise is better than any pill she could ever prescribe. Again, another craze, intermittent fasting. This is where you deprive your body of food for a short period of time, let's say 10 hours or 15 hours or whatever. And then number 4 is exposure therapy. The golden standard treatment for reducing anxiety is slow and continuous and deliberate exposure to the thing you're afraid of. For repeated, continuous and voluntary exposure of what we fear, there's less activation of the fear center in our brain. Okay, so I definitely experienced a level of social anxiety. So a couple of years ago, when everything started to open up again, I decided to go to this networking event, and it takes me about 2 hours to get there. And like 10 minutes from the event, this is after like not speaking to anybody new for 2 years, right? Just keep that in mind. So 10 minutes from the event, I was like, you know what? I can literally just turn around, just walk away. Like, I don't have to go here. Just the amount of anxiety I actually experienced. My heart was beating 50 million miles an hour. Like, I was shaking a little bit, sweating and stuff. I generally strongly considered and thought about just turning around, just going back home. Like, nobody has to know. But I went past that, I went there anyways. And it turns out it wasn't even that scary. Then with every event I went to, I felt less and less fear. The more I exposed myself to social situations, the less anxiety I got. Okay, I'm getting tired and I have to wake up pretty early tomorrow. So let's come back to this video tomorrow. Okay, I have a little confession to make. So it's actually been over a week. I ended up going to a UPW event, Tony Robbins UPW event in Birmingham, NEC, which was a lot of fun. Okay, also, I'm running on very little sleep. I'm running on just fucking jumping up and down for like 4 days straight, and just good vibes really. So yeah, let's try and bring this video back home. Point number 4: self-bindings. Self-binding is a tool that helps us stick to good habits by shaping our environment and rules around our behavior. It's based on recognizing and accepting our inherent human weaknesses. Okay, if you look at James Clear's stuff, which I resonate with a lot, his book Atomic Habits, it talks about how we want to change our environment in a way which makes it difficult to carry out bad habits, makes the good habits very easy to actually do. Okay, obviously all of us know that relying simply on willpower and self-discipline leads us nowhere. I tried this with many different things, from quitting porn to like quitting video games to quitting social media. Doesn't work. Okay, so the following are 3 self-binding methods which will help us avoid relapsing to high dopamine activities and addictions. Firstly, create physical barriers. This is more about making it very difficult to actually access our high dopamine behaviors and addictions. These are just the basic things like deleting the apps you don't want to be going on, then getting rid of notifications. Also, here we can just completely remove our phone from the room when we sleep or when we do work. But if this is still a problem, like you go out of the way to pick up your phone after you wake up or halfway through working, you can actually take it a step further. You can use a kitchen safe box. You set how long you want the box to be locked for, and you put your device in it, meaning I can't actually like get to the device until the timer runs out. This crosses over with the next point, which is it's easier to moderate our high dopamine activities if we have an actual time limit placed in them. In an experiment on rats who were given a bit of like, sniff for just a set period throughout the day, like a time limit basically, able to moderate the usage and consume a steady amount throughout the day. So on the other hand, rats which were given a lot of sniff, unlimited amount of sniff, they consumed it until basically died. Here you can set a time where you can actually go on your high dopamine activities, like you can only go on YouTube or on your phone when you've done the most important task for the day, or you can set a screen time which prevents you from going on certain apps at certain times of the day, or you can use a kitchen safe box, which we spoke about in the previous point. Okay, thirdly, avoid subtle triggers. Many addiction, a small temptation can lead to large cravings, which will cause a major relapse or a binge. So here it perfectly makes sense to avoid the subtle triggers, which can cause these cravings. One of the biggest stories throughout the book is this 6-year-old engineer, and he's got a severe addiction to adult movies. He even went as far to create his own machine which will sync with the videos and perform electric shocks on him as he does the deeds. After months and months of recovery, he relapsed, seeing some of these interesting channels in hotel rooms. So, and then which caused him to kind of just spiral out of control. So what he learned is that he needs to get rid of absolutely all triggers. For some of us, this may seem very extreme, but people who have really big addictions, yeah, that's just no brainer really. The fifth point is shame and honesty. When we reach out to other people and they shame and reject us, this can cause the addiction to actually strengthen. There's actually a different kind of shame, pro-social shame, which is based on radical honesty that can actually help us in the long term. Even aware that we even have a problem, like, I don't have a problem, mate. You got a fucking problem. Watch your mouth. Yeah, we are caught in this grip of an addiction, of this compulsive habit. By speaking to another person about your bad habit or an addiction or whatever you want to call it, this serves as a mirror by which we see ourselves clearly for maybe even the very first time. One of the major reasons why therapy is just so useful and beneficial is because it allows another person to listen to this concern without any sort of judgment. So we can more or less use that as a mirror and learn how we really feel about this problem. Usually we assume that other people reject us for being flawed, but in reality the opposite actually happens. Admitting our human weakness makes others feel closer to us. It creates this real, authentic and intimate connections all humans strive for. This builds a strong network of social support, which is incredibly important for helping us with addiction. For healing and recovery to occur, we must take on full responsibility and accountability for our situations. Even if the situation is not actually your fault, you must see this power to choose your response to the situation. By being a victim, it takes away your power for you to actually do something about the situation. Here is a good quote: what happened to you was not your fault, but how you go forward is your responsibility. Thank you so much guys for watching the video, and thank you for being patient. If you want to know a bit more about free tools I used to help me with my adult movies addiction, I've got a video about it right here.